about, we're talking about chickens as individuals because we love animals, but the systems in America do not necessarily love animals. Tell us about the history of chicken eating in America so that our listeners have an understanding of how it's evolved over the years.
Absolutely. So chicken has really only become this central part of our diet in the last few decades. And before that, chickens, as they were, roasted on a Sunday. And it was a special meal that people ate maybe once a week. And what's more is the chickens that people used to eat were raised for dual purposes, laying eggs and their meat. So they might lay eggs for a while, and then once that became something that the family didn't want them to do in the backyard anymore, then they would kill them and roast them. So it was an occasional special thing. But there came a time around the Depression where we started to really mechanize and speed up and become more efficient in the production of chickens. Two things happened. One is they started to selectively breed for chickens that laid eggs versus the ones that were for meat. So they discovered there were strains that were really good at laying eggs and strains that were really good for eating. And they started separating and selectively breeding in the way that we selectively breed for dogs, like for particular characteristics, like a certain type of hair or feature, personality. Well, they were specifically for meat chickens, only selecting for breast meat because that is the type of meat that Americans like to eat. And that just got worse and worse. They just kept selecting and selecting and selecting until they had essentially what we have today, which is a Frankenchicken. And I hate to say that because it demonizes the chicken, it's the industry. But there's no better way to describe. And if these chickens have very, very wide breasts, they wobble, they can't walk. The chickens we eat today are killed at 6 weeks of age. Many people don't realize that they're babies. And just by comparison, a chicken raised for meat will not lay eggs till 5 or 6 months. So these are real babies, not mature at all. But they're large enough to facilitate our protein consumption. And unfortunately, the birds are very resilient. And that is, in a way, they're sad for them because they can survive in these horrific conditions, very crowded. And this led to a rapid increase of production where we went from very few farms raising backyard birds to bigger farms raising more birds to then fewer farms raising tons of birds. And right now in the United States, we raise 9 billion meat chickens only. They're called broilers. Per year, they're raised and slaughtered. And we're eating over 20, as Americans, we're eating over 20 birds a year, each American, and none of us eat chickens, so somebody else is eating our batch. And it's shocking. And the consumption has gone from a roast on a Sunday shared by a family to each person eating 20 chickens a year. It's exponential growth of our consumption. And today in history, sadly, more chickens are being raised and killed than ever before in history. Yeah. We're at an all-time high of production and consumption.
And if the industry has its way, there will be more.
Yeah. So going back to just had a roast on a Sunday to where we are now. What do you give credence to that happening and that unfolding? Is it the industry?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest changes was the fast food market. So McDonald's Chicken McNugget was one of the biggest factors in creating an increase in consumption. And then you had Popeyes and KFC also creating buckets of fried chicken, making it readily available. And the automation of that production really changed, and the convenience of it became really automated and sped up the production. So if you look at kind of the history, the creation of Chicken McNuggets was where we saw a big shift in consumption, where it became readily available.
Was that in the 70s?
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I told you before we had this podcast, it's Colonel Sanders' fault because I'm from Kentucky, and I saw that unfold.
Yeah. I thought it was an advertising push because of the move away from beef in World War II for some reason. But guess that wasn't.
Could have had a role.
Yeah, no, am I totally off? Was there any?
Well, there was during World War II. There was some move, but it wasn't related to beef necessarily. So there was something. Vertical integration is where one company or person owns every aspect of the system, from the feed to the farm to the farmers to the slaughterhouse to the shipping. That was invented in really in Georgia during the Depression. And it was one particular person in Georgia who came up with this concept. He ran a feed mill, and he was looking for ways to sell more of his feed. And he was like, I'll contract farmers I'll drop off chickens with them, and they'll have to buy my feed, and this will sell more feed. And this was the beginning of the contract vertical integration system. And he was like, oh, this really works. And in North Georgia, where I don't live too far from there, this exploded. The industry exploded in this way. It was really successful. And he raised so much money in this way, he was able to open his own slaughterhouse then. And that was one of the very first vertical integrated systems.
You say that chicken farming started factory farming.
Correct. It was really where we saw the efficiency being the focus rather than the care for the animal and the stewardship for the animal, where the stewardship was forgotten and efficiency became the main objective.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.